So good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar. So I'm Dr. Alvin Marcelo. I'm the Executive Director of the Asia eHealth Information Network. And tonight, we are fortunate to have back Mr. Jose Costa Tejera, who will give us a part two of our two-part webinar on how to convert our narrative policies to computable representations like FHIR. As you all know, we are in our respective countries, we are grappling with the difficulty of aligning the narrative policies that our ministries and government agencies release, and then connecting them to the information systems, the electronic information systems that they have asked us to use. In reality, it is really very difficult to align narrative policies with computable representations of these policies. It takes a lot of effort and consolidation of ideas from different stakeholders, from epidemiologists, policymakers, informaticians, clinicians, public health practitioners. So even before we release a computable format for different stakeholders to use, we should undergo a method or a system of consulting the stakeholders, understanding how they comprehend the world around them, how they comprehend the disease process, how they comprehend the population health environment, and after that, write the narrative policy. And then we pass the narrative policy to the IT department, and hopefully the IT department will be able to create a electronic system that supports that narrative policy. But it is easier said than done. After writing that electronic policy, most probably there were some eureka moments during the process of converting the narrative policy to electronic policies. And you need to go back to the narrative policy and to update the narrative policy. So this is where AeHIN really espouses collaboration, coordination, and communication amongst all stakeholders. So we thank in advance Jose for accepting this offer. In our previous webinars, we had Carl Leitner, who talked to us about the WHO SMART guidelines. It is a method of converting narrative policies to computable guidelines. But he did not go to details, and we asked Jose to give us the details. So part one, he gave us an idea of how the process will be, getting the narrative policy to a paper form, from a paper form into a simple online form, and then from a simple online form into a FHIR implementation guide or profile. And in today, part two, he will show us how to do that in a very simple way. And then right before he ends, I will come back and then I will invite the audience and basically just tell you to give us ideas for what you think are needed for part three. And I thank again Jose in advance for accepting the offer that there might be a part three. And let's listen to the audience and let's see what other topics they might ask for part three. So without further ado, I pass the floor now to Jose to show us how to convert paper guidelines into electronic FHIR profiles. Jose.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a real pleasure. So today I would like to share with you indeed a bit of the practical aspects of how can we implement or make our specifications, to implement our specifications around that narrative guidance or around the requirements that we have, and how that quickly turns out to be a FHIR specification. So the purpose today is that we will build together. I will be doing this live, but I will provide also all the links and the tools, several shortcuts that you can use to play along and to do it on your side as well, whether now or after, as you watch the presentation, or if you want to recap. The idea is that we start with the narrative description of our problem, of the data that we want to accommodate or to use, and how do we make an implementation guide around this so that you can see it's really convenient and easy to use those FHIR tools. With the with regards to that, I will start by, I just took some notes for those of you who want to go through the tooling. I'm just posting the link on the chat for a small Google Doc. That's the one that I'm going to share my screen in a second. I presume I'm sharing my screen. Please let me know if that's not the case. So this first page is, I see lots of people jumping in. So this is just the tools that you might need to do exactly what we're going to do today. There's been quite some preparation effort or some facilitation effort to give a set of simple guides here. So lots of things that would be much more complicated, but we just made it easier for you, especially in the setup of implementation guide. But these are the things that you will need. So I'm just going to quickly introduce this part so that we see what we're talking about. So we are going to make implementation guides. FHIR implementation guides, they are usually hosted on GitHub accounts. It has been a community preference for a while. Nothing prevents anyone from using another infrastructure, but all the setup is done on GitHub. So what you would be having is, what we should have is a GitHub account to deposit your files and your work and to iterate on your work. It's really convenient. It's simple and it's free, so you should have it. In addition to the GitHub account, you would also have the GitHub desktop, so a GitHub client, desktop client for your computer. For those of you who are not familiar with what that means, you'll see it's very easy, but just basically, as we are doing GitHub, so as we're working on GitHub, we are changing a local some file, so we're changing some file content, and GitHub allows us to do that on a remote server and track the changes. If you want to do that locally, it's much more convenient. And if you have a client, you can do, for example, what I'm going to do now, which is just, so I have one example, FHIR implementation guide here. That's the one that I'm going to walk us through. But if I don't want to edit this online, I just can do this offline. So it takes some time of synchronization, which in this case I already done previous to the session. And this actually turns out to be just copying the files that we have onto my local machine. So what we're going to do is to change the content of our implementation guide to meet that that concern or that focus, that goal that we have, which is how do we transform our specifications into an implementation guide. We are going to walk through that, and to set this up, first thing is indeed a GitHub account and ideally a GitHub client. You should have a text editor or an integrated development environment for editing the files. This is what I have in my system with Visual Studio. I can show it to you just now. So if I open my files with my editor, then I just see the files that are on the server. So this is exactly the same content that I have on the server. And if we want to run the implementation guide publication, we have two choices. We can do this on the cloud, so on the GitHub cloud. That's already set up for you. We will go through this very quickly. But if you want to do this, so if you want to do lots of changes and if you want to try out the changes, because this is really what it comes down to, is that you iterate and you make changes and you validate those changes. And if you see those changes are correct, and then you check your documents and then you change them again, this is, if you want to do that more efficiently, I would say, you might want to install some local tools on your systems. They are listed here. So you have to have Java, JDK. You have to have Jekyll installed. It's easy to install it. You have a special tool that is a HL7 tool that you will also be able to install rather quickly. Maybe you have to install Node beforehand. So the instructions are here. There's even a caveat on Windows. Sometimes there's some issues. So if you have if you have this issue, then you have these things here. So you have the link there. So feel free to. So this will take a while. So Jekyll and Sushi will take a while. So if you want after the session just to run through this, it's really easy. The point of that is that once you do that, you will be able to take care of building your implementation guide locally. So now I'm going into the jargon, because this is pretty much what it comes down to. So the steps I would like to cover today is, first of all, set up the tools. I'm not going to go through that. I just showed you how the tools would work because I cannot uninstall the tools and reinstall the tools on my machine. But suppose that you have your tools installed and you want to make your implementation guide. To allow you to have a very, very quick start, we made a boilerplate implementation guide that's just empty. This is it. It's also linked here on this document. So this is a template, so you can say I want to create an implementation guide based on this. So there's lots of files that you don't need to know upfront what they are supposed to be for. You don't need to worry too much about that. If you just want to start and then learn as you go, you just use this template. So you can just use this, and then I'm just going to create something. For example, I do this. So in your case, you would create, I don't know, viral hepatitis reporting or my own project, whatever. You create your own repository. We are still on GitHub, so we are creating this on the cloud, and then you decide if you want to do it publicly or privately. Most of the things that we are going to do on the cloud, they require this to be public. So if you take it privately, of course, you cannot share the results with other people. That's which is one of the advantages that we have. So a quick step is this one: just create the implementation, the FHIR implementation guide, and if you please remember to click here to include all the branches. It's important for one thing that I'm going to share next. Once you do this, we are creating, so in this case, I am creating my own implementation guide. So I'm creating my basic structure that allows me to have my own implementation guide. And this is for me the most crucial point. So all the projects will be iterations on top of something. So if you take one existing implementation, for example, the food allergy, and you want to do it for your own country or for your own set of allergies or for your own data values or for data schemas that might be a bit different, what you would normally do is to start, as much as possible, start with something that already exists. If you have that possibility, you do that. So in this case, I'm starting with an implementation guide that has nothing because I want to add my own content. And I just have all the technical stuff that I don't need to worry anymore about that. And at this moment, this is a working implementation guide. So the fact that I made it public and the fact that I clicked on that box allows me to do one thing. From this moment on, I can change any of the files here. So let me just change the README. And this is just a test. I can change this file locally or on the so locally on my computer or on the cloud. I'm just doing this, and also to support your efforts of getting things ready and getting things out there as quickly as possible. This GitHub template that I shared with you has already a procedure that builds the implementation guide for you. So in case you're not familiar with implementation guides, this is where we are going to see it for the first time. We have a bunch of files there that we really don't worry at this moment what they are. There's lots of stuff there that we will explore very quickly. At the end of this, what this creates is, let's say, a deployment. It creates an implementation guide. So this is what an implementation guide looks like. It has a table of contents with a couple of pages. It has a title. It has this kind of navigation with the menus. And this is it. And this is the bare bones. So this is an implementation guide that has no content as exactly as I wanted. And this is where, if I have a new project, I always go here and I start building from this. So if I have a project for any kind of reporting or any kind of interfacing that I need to specify, I start with a FHIR implementation guide empty, and then I just clone that repository as I just did, and from this moment on, I just add my files. And this is what we are going to do now for the topic of food allergies. So bear with me, and please at any time, let me see if there's any questions on the chat. Let me see. Yeah, just please type them on the chat. Any questions or any doubts that you might have, or any ideas that you might think, things that you might see me missing. But I just wanted, first of all, to reach this point where we have an implementation guide. So we have a bare bones, empty implementation guide with just some sample content, which we can change. Now, our goal or our work is always to do the same thing. We will look at the specifications and map and create the content of our implementation guide based on those specifications. So for sake of example and for sake of being more expedited in this session, we start with the food allergy content that we have already prepared. So this is kind of like those cooking shows. We know that the cooking is already done so that we don't spend 2 hours looking at the oven so that to wait for it to be ready. So the content is there. This is the same structure, is the same kind of implementation guide. It just has a different content and it works the same way. So if I go here and to this page, I have the same thing with a different table of contents, just the things that I added. And these are the things that we are going to add here. I'm just going to mention now how to add the content because that is what we are doing. So key point, start with an empty implementation guide or an implementation guide that is a good foundation for what you have, and then iterate. How do we iterate? It's very simple. We change the content of the files. So as you remember, I just mentioned that we have the implementation guide. The content resides on a server, so on the GitHub server, sorry. Let me check the food allergy webinar. So this one, and I'm just going to clone it to my own machine. So I'm just going to open this. I already did. And I'm going to open this on my external editor. So I just go here and open in Visual Studio. And this is my implementation guide. So these are the files that I had there. These files, they are not something that we care about. When we change an implementation guide, we are talking about typically 2 types of things: creating narrative pages and creating FHIR resources or FHIR resource specifications. And that's what we are going to do today. First of all, there is one step of creating of changing the implementation guide so that the title is correct and my version is correct. So this is what I had done on this one. So if you get the other implementation, actually, let me just show you the other implementation guide so that you can see it rather quickly, just to do a before and after comparison. So this is the implementation guide template. So this is the empty template. As you see, it has my ig.xml with all the X's here, just as a reminder to change the name. Actually, I put this on purpose so that when you go through this, you can just search for every part where you find XX, and you know that that's something that you should change, because this is the contact here is by default the HL7 contact. You don't want that. You want to have your own contact of your own organization, your description of your implementation guide. So for example, this would be an implementation guide. I'm not going to, actually, I should not do this on this one because this is the template. I'm just going to do this on the other one. Let me just open the other one, which is the one I just created, this one. Open it now. So I'm just creating a dummy content on my own machine. And I'm just going to open it again. And this is what you have to do. So you have to go through the files, and there is the input file, and then you have this here. And then normally, let me just do a quick check here. Yep. So, and if you go here, I'm going to change my description for an implementation guide on allergy reporting, something like this, or on user reported allergies. So we are just changing the content. When I do this, and especially when I have the title as well, food allergies. So if I do this, then I'm changing the implementation guide. Sorry, food. So I'm just changing the content, and then it will show up in the GitHub repository. Because I have my GitHub client here, sorry for those of you for which this is basic, just just reminding that. You will see the changes that you do. You make the changes and just update name and title. I'm just going to do this once because everything else is the same. And then you commit, and then you upload to the server, which means that then you go to the GitHub, and now the GitHub says that I just made a commit now. I just changed it, and thanks to that automation that we prepared, in a few minutes, it takes usually 1 or 2 minutes, you will see here this updated, and then you have your implementation guide. So this is the first thing that you do to set up your implementation guide from the bare bones and just change the title, etc. And then we have our fun. So the process here is always the same. We look at our specifications and we see what do we want to have, what we want this to be about. So we want this to be a food allergy. Let's say that we did some research and we searched some online forms for reporting allergies, and we have an idea of what we want for our food allergies. We want we want to document what kind of allergy it is, when it was reported. So what kind of allergy is it peanut allergy? Is it fish allergy or seafood allergy? We want to capture those things. So, and let's say that we have those requirements, so that somehow we see by looking at a related form online or by looking at the guidance that is in our country or in our project, we as implementers of these specifications, we should expect this input. The good thing about doing this in this FHIR way is that we can iterate very quickly, and we can see. Let me see if this is already online. No, it's not. I'm just pressing the refresh button to see if the title changes. But so when we get our input, we can very quickly say to our stakeholders, and this is extremely powerful in my opinion. So this, from my experience in doing integrations and system design, it's really powerful when you can go to your stakeholders and say, this is what we understood from your requirements. Is this what you want? And if you bring that sentence, if you bring that collaboration to the table, it really helps, because people will say, oh, yes, or no, that's not really what I meant. Oh, no, that was not clear. Or no, this is something that was wrong. We have to go back and reanalyze this because this is conflicting information. All of these things can happen. And if you have a fast loop of feedback, which is what the implementation guide allows you to have, then you are avoiding late risks. You still have to do changes, but they will not be 1 week before the project goes live. You can do this very quickly in the beginning. So while this thing is still building, should be building now. I'll see why it doesn't build. So I have the implementation guide, and I just changed the title and the name and the description. Remembering that I showed you the tools that you have to have to run this locally. What does it mean to run locally? So I just made the changes a few minutes ago, and I uploaded them to the server. So the server is now having my content, and it should be displayed here. I don't know why it's not refreshing. It should be refreshing the title here. Maybe I give it a few more minutes. But this is all of this happens in the cloud. But if I want to go really fast at this, what I do is to open a local command line on my computer, and I just run one of those scripts that are here, gen1 bat or gen1 sh, as you have it on your machine. And so if you have a Mac or Linux, you use the sh, and of course on Windows, you use the bat file. And this runs the same procedure as it's run on the cloud. Depending on your machine, this tends to be much faster. And then you build this, and then you can see yourself if something went wrong, if I forgot the value, or if I did something wrong, and that's it. So this is I think for me, the fundamental point. Start with a baseline and iterate, adding content. So now I'm going to add some content. So I just changed the title. Let's say the next thing that I want to add is some narrative. So while it's building, I can always work on the files while it's building. So I have my implementation guide. You will have to know that the way to add narrative text is to go to the page content folder and add those files there. You can add pages in XHTML, which is just the HTML part, also just the relevant part of HTML without all the headers, etc. Or you can add Markdown. I'm just going to add a file called introduction.markdown. And so Markdown, for those of you who might not be familiar, it's just a syntax for writing stuff. It's really text friendly. You just type things, you give it special highlight, and then this, and then you type things. So this is the introduction page, and you can put some content. You can put some tables as well. I think this should give you a table. There's always how do you say? There's always a cheat sheet if you want sorry, like that. There's always cheat sheet for these languages. So the important thing, what I'm showing is that if you start with a Markdown file, you can add tables, you can add whatever you want, and then you can have peanuts. For example, if you want to have these peanuts, or you can add links. Links are done in a special syntax. Again, I'm not going to recap the syntax, but basically you can say this is a link. I think this is how it works. I don't remember. That's why I also always have a cheat sheet as well. Whatever is the URL. And I think this actually should work. And because it's Markdown, and because I'm working on development environment, there are plugins that allow me to do quick preview of this data. I don't know why this is not working. The upper table is working. The lower table is not working. 1, 2, 3, 4. This should be working. Forgive me. I knew that I should not invent anything new. So tables is something I can look up, but you can add tables. You can add bold text, normal text. So you can add italics or bold text. It's just, sorry, this is not a Markdown thing. And obviously I forgot the basics, but I don't have to have those by heart. So you just add the content and you create the narrative. Now, let me go back to the food allergy, the one that is already baked, and to see that's exactly what I did here. So there is an introduction to allergies. And I just typed some text here. I presume you can see you can read the text on my screen. Just close all of these things that are not necessary. So, so you see, this is just something that I added before. Some background, and we say that this implementation guide provides a narrative, for example, this page, logical data model, the profiles with extensions, the value sets, and examples. This is what it does. Actually, I can add here the questionnaire. Form. So I'm adding the content, and by adding the content, I'm creating my implementation guide. Yeah, and there is one more trick that we have to do here. If I add a page, I have to go here, and this is the technical bit that is necessary. You can see this from the link. I'll show you how to best see how this is done if you want to remember something. But basically, you go to this XML file that is the one that contains the index of the content, and you say, I just added a page, and my page is called introduction. So I'm just going to say, after the index and before the changes, I'm going to add the page called introduction. So I'm now telling my IG is the same as it was before, plus the page that I just added. And I'm just saying that this page is added as Markdown. And then introduction. That's the title of the page. That's it. So once I do this, my implementation guide now has another page. So it will have in 30 seconds or so once this builds. How do I do this locally? How do I check this locally? I go to my output folder. This is my implementation guide, the same that I downloaded from GitHub. And then there's a couple, when I run the build, it adds a couple of folders, a couple of content. The one that we care about is the output. This is empty for now. It's being generated. It was just generated now. And then you see, for example, that I have my page called index. That's my starting page. And you see this one has already been built, is already has a change title. And if I go to the table of contents, I have my page here called Introduction, which is the one that I just added. I just added dummy text actually, and I don't know if I even saved it. So maybe I didn't save it on the other file. Yeah, I don't think I did save it. So, and this will happen a lot. So as you make your implementation guides, you will see that, oh, I forgot to save, or I save, then this is it, or I save this, but now this is inconsistent with the other part. That's the iteration. So this is one part. It's actually the most difficult part, or the part that requires more changes is adding narrative, but it's always like this. You add one page, you link to that page, and that's it. And then the page becomes part of your table of contents. Next to this, what would we do? And now going back to the process that Marcelo was talking about. Suppose that we have our requirements for food allergies, and we have someone told us that, yeah, we should have what the patient is allergic to, who is when was the allergy recorded. Maybe I want to capture something else, like when was the allergy first noted, what kind of what's the status of the allergy? Is it something that I know is there, or something that I suspect it is there? So it's something confirmed or not. Suppose that you have these requirements, these specifications, or this statement like this, as Carl is going to mention in the future sessions, this level 1, this business level language, like we need to capture this and that and that. When you have that, first thing you do is to try to capture your logical data model. So logical data model is one FHIR artifact, and it's something that we have. I think we have it in here. Oh, sorry, this is not, because this is the new one. This is the food allergy. Let me see if I have the models here. Yeah. So one of the tools that I mentioned that you should install is FHIR Shorthand. And actually, I should put the link in there as well. So let me get here. Let me just get the link for you. So FHIR Shorthand, especially for those who have seen this in the previous session, you have you have different ways of doing this. You can do this with FHIR. So what we are doing is to just add this. So this is a FHIR artifact. That's what we are going to add. But this is very cumbersome to add. It's really, it quickly becomes a large file, large JSON files, where if you make a mistake with a comma, or if you make a mistake in the path here, or if you just change things slightly and you don't change the things that you need to change, it becomes really difficult. So the HL7 community has developed a shorthand language, which is what I'm using here to describe the model. And it's much more convenient. And I'm just showing you this to see this is the way to have, this is the easiest way to document your business language of your specifications. So if someone says, I need to capture, of course, yeah, I forgot that one, the patient. I need to capture what is the thing that the patient is allergic to. I need to capture if there's a clinical status, but let's say that in discussions, you just capture the clinical status. You have this. So is it a current allergy, or is it a past allergy? That's nice. But then someone, let's say the first time you bring this to a physician, they might say, well, that's correct, but in addition to this, we need another thing. We need to have the fact that whether this allergy is verified or not, because sometimes we think that people are allergic to something, but it was not confirmed, or there was just another cause for that. And then a very important point here is that you build these models starting first and foremost by your business requirements. So capture what the users say they want, but try to relate as much as possible into existing specifications. So look at HL7, look at AeHIN. In this case, I would look at HL7 and see what does HL7 have to offer to me. So I'll just go to the HL7 FHIR specification and I see what they have for allergy intolerance. They have a resource. So I might as well start with this. I might start basing my model, my abstract model, on this concrete physical model. We don't have to. There might be lots of things that we want that are not in the FHIR specification, but the way that we name these things, the structure of the data there's lots of know-how behind how FHIR resources are captured. So when I do a logical model, personal preference, when I do a logical model, I listen first to what is important to capture from the business side, and then I will see how FHIR community has done it, how other implementations have done it. So it's really important that you look or you keep an eye on what is being developed by others, so that you can save some time in those iterations. Someone says, we need the status of the allergy. And by doing this kind of preparation work, you'll see, right, but do you mean the clinical status or the verification status? And that is a very powerful engagement tool, that you ask these questions, because there's lots of know-how embedded in the FHIR resources. So assuming that we do that, so we listen to the stakeholders, and they say, well, we need the patient, the allergen, of course, the thing that is causing the allergies, the status, the two statuses, the date of recording, who recorded it, who asserted it, because it might be someone different than the one recorded. So maybe recorder is a nurse, the asserter is the patient. Maybe you want to keep track of that, especially because it's a self-reported thing. And then the reactions. You might want to say, if there is any known reaction to the allergy, then you might want to capture this just as an additional information. And then that's what you do. So there is a syntax behind this, behind making logical models. It is in that link that I just shared with you. I just close it. Where is it? This one. It is in this link. The how to do logical model, etc. That's where you start. And by making your logical model, which is really as simple as typing the text, so the name of the element, and then is it mandatory or not? Does it support multiple or not? And then put a data type. By default, just put a type string if you don't know what you want. It really doesn't matter a lot in this phase. It helps you further. For example, here I want to say the allergen. I can put a string, but I know that this is going to be a coded element, because I want my allergies to be coded, of course, after discussion with the stakeholders, with the clinical stakeholders or business stakeholders. And if they agree that this is going to be a coded element, then I might put here a different data type. It's not mandatory. Actually, it's a bit of a tweak what we are doing here, but it just gives us a good impression of what data types are we talking about. For example, the recorded date, well, it's a date time or a date, and the rest is coded, and this is a note, it's just a string. It just helps. And the syntax is like this. You can see the syntax in the link that I shared before. The element, name, cardinality, data type, and then a short description and a long description, which is, in this case, they are the same, just for sake of keeping things simple. And then you have your logical model. If you do that, let me just actually copy this, and it's really, really down to this. So if I go to my models, and if I copy and paste this, I just build, and I will have immediately on my page the model. If I made a mistake here on the syntax, by now I would know, which is really important, because then you can iterate and the tool tells you. So if I make an example, and if my example misses a mandatory field, then the tool will tell us. And this is really important, because our specifications, they are always consistent. They are always self-validated. And this is really important for us. And it will be much more important when we want to deploy these things. So yeah, go ahead.
Could you run those two command line commands that you just did, because you ran them very quick. So Gen 1s, okay. It was a Gen 1. All right.
Sorry, it's the
all
script
right.
that is
all
there.
Right. Only Gen 1. All right. Thank you.
Don't use that one. Oh, by the way, thanks. Actually, that reminds me of one thing. The first time that you run this, maybe, and feel free to confirm if this is a good thing for us to discuss, to have a short session on this, how to set up these things and debug the things that can go wrong. First time you do this, it will not, the Gen 1s will not work, because the Gen 1s will call for a file that you will not have on your computer if you just set up the tools. But if that happens, you have a thing called update publisher. That's really the only thing that you have to do. The update publisher will download a file, the Java file that you need to do this. So besides all those tools that you have installed, for each implementation guide, you just have to do the update publisher. You just run it once. I'm not going to run it now because it takes 1 minute or so. And then it just sets up everything. And once you do that, you can just do the Gen 1s.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
If you run the gen once, you will have, where is it? I had this on my, yeah. So I go, so this is the text that I did not save before, I just saved it now. So it's finally here. And if I go to my table of contents, I have another thing, which is the food allergy logical model. I just created this. So this is exactly what I just created. And there's a small annoying thing at this moment because it always goes to this page, which most likely you don't care about. What you care about is this or this. Differential table is basically the elements that you added. So the food allergy model, you have the patient, the allergen, exactly as we defined them there. So in the content. So this is it. So I just added my first thing, and this is what I would now go to the physicians and say, or to the specialists, to the allergologists, and say, okay, is this what we want to capture? Do you see something missing? Is the clinical status really mandatory? Because here it's mandatory. And is the verification status really mandatory? And if they say yes, and the patient as well, of course, reactions are not mandatory. Reactions are 0 to 1. No, wait, reaction 0 to 1, that does not make sense. Well, then we go there and we change reactions to 0 to many, because we can have 0 to many reactions. And for each one of them, we have certain data, but we have more reactions. And this is pretty much what we'll be doing. Lots of the iterations will be very small, like this cardinality is wrong, this description is wrong, and then you can go ahead. The second thing that you do is, so after you have this, then you go and look into the FHIR resources and say, let me see if I can find it, yeah, and make the profile. So I'm going to say, I'm going to look at the allergy intolerance FHIR resource, and I'm going to make my profile, which is called food allergy. And I'm going to make some statements about this. Let me just copy this thing here over to the other one. So there is a, so where is this? The not this. Sorry, it's here. It's empty and it's here. So as long as you put your FHIR shorthand content in a folder called FSH and a file called with the extension FSH, then the machine will understand that it has to transform this into the FHIR resources. And just for you to see that there is no strange magic here, I just did the model with this shorthand language, and it transforms the model into this proper FHIR thing. So that's all. There's a preprocessor that does that. But now I'm doing the same thing on the models. And what I want on the model is that the patient is, I'm just going to change 1 to 1. There's a flag called must support that we use a lot. I can actually give that recommendation, if I may, which is by habit, if something is on my logical model here, then it is relevant. And when I make a, when I go into the FHIR, where is it? Sorry, I have to go the allergy intolerance. So if I go to the FHIR resource, there's lots of things there that I really don't care about. The last occurrence, for example, the criticality. In this case, I decided that I don't want to look into that. So there, just to mark the difference between the things that our experts, they have really required us to do, and the things that are already in FHIR, when I make a profile, my profile will contain all these changes. For example, the clinical experts, they say that the clinical status is mandatory. In FHIR, this is not the case. You see, it's 0 to 1, but I want it mandatory, so I can do that. The verification status as well, and the code of the allergy, I also want to make it mandatory. In addition, everything that we do, that all the elements that we have, so the patient, the clinical status, verification status, the code, candidate, those I add a flag called MS, must support, which simply means there's an ongoing discussion. It means that if a system receives this data, it should not ignore it. So basically it says, I'm sending you a FHIR message, and if I'm sending this FHIR message or this element in the FHIR message, it's not because FHIR requires me to do, it's because I have a special meaning behind this. So the clinical status and the verification status, they are not there just by chance, they are there because we have to. Some elements are mandatory, so we have to put it there. Some elements we can say, I'm sending you the information that I know you need, and I'm sending you more stuff, that's fine. But if we want to say the ones that we really have to have supported by both ends of the system, we can make this special flag there. So I just go through the elements in the FHIR resource, and this is really what it comes down to. So when you do profiling, so there's more that we could discuss, but going profiling is looking at the FHIR resource, selecting it and say, oh, I see that I have a thing called clinical status. It's almost as I wanted it, but It's optional and I want to make it mandatory. Okay, so what I do is clinical status 1-to-1, and I add the must support flag because I wanted that. I do the same thing for the others. And for the code, I say, okay, there's a code here, but I don't like these codes here. So HL7 has some standard codes. I don't like the codes. I'm going to very quickly show how that is done next. But that's what I do. Element by element, I see what do I want to change, if I want to change something in relation to the FHIR content. After this, I save my file, I regenerate, and in 30 seconds, we'll see the results. Oh, wait, I made a mistake. That is good. There is one error here, and the error is in line 10. Line 10. Oh, right, because I'm getting codes from another system that does not exist yet. So I'm saying the food allergies are from a code that, and I did not define that value set. So that is an expected error. And this is why you want to build these things locally, because if you have to wait 2 minutes just to see that you forgot something that was obvious, then that's 2 minutes that you lost. So while this is building, I'm actually going to add the terminology parts, which is, let's say that our clinical expert, they said, in this country, we want to have these elements. So we go to SNOMED, we say, this is peanut, and this is tree nuts, this is milk proteins, this is egg proteins. These are the things in SNOMED. So again, there is a syntax behind this. I mean, this is all FHIR shorthand. And if we have this set of allergies that we want to capture, then we start with this. And this is actually what was missing in the other one. So I'm just going here and create the terminology. Before I add this, let me just show you how it is currently building. Where is it?
Jose.
Yeah.
So I hope to stop you at 5 minutes before 10 so that we can answer some of the questions.
Right. And I'm about, because this is now the same thing, I'm about to enter the final stage. Okay. So we have the logical model as I had before, and I have the profile. So as you see now, the moment that I created that, I have my profile, and here you see the elements that are changed. So all these must support, they come up with an S here, and this is actually the full FHIR resource. But in my specification, this is noisy. This is something that I don't want to see. What I want to see is how does my allergy, how does my food allergy profile compare to the allergy? That's why we have a profile, a differential view here. So, and what I just did is by using that notation to add these things. Now, the other thing that I wanted to add, and there's just 2 more things, which is the value sets. So how I do it is just to add the value sets here. Again, there's a syntax to this, but I'm going to say from the when selecting the allergy, it has to be coded and it should be from one of these codes. So what I do is to first of all define the value set, and then I go to my profiles and I can actually do this here. There is a profiling question, which is does it have to be one of these codes, or can it be any code? And these codes are just there as an indication of what codes are supported. That's something that you have to ask your clinicians. They will tell you one of 2 things. It has to be these codes because we cannot have bad data, or they can say we cannot be so strict. We want to get as much data as possible, so they have to be flexible. They will pretty much sit there, and that's when you have to make decisions. And again, if today you make something, so the word is extensible, so that you use those codes and any other codes, or if you make it very strict, which is called a required binding. If you do this, then you can always go back and change it. It's really easy to change. And when I do this, I'm just going to rebuild. While it rebuilds, I will show you the final step that I had on the implementation guide, which is really a nice thing that we can add. Sorry, let me go to the right window, which is the forms. So there is a syntax also behind this, and there is some macros that I mentioned in the last session. But what we want to do is to make a food allergy questionnaire. So at this moment, until now, I just created my abstract, so my logical data model. I created a FHIR profile that should contain at the end the FHIR allergies as reported by a user, but I didn't do anything about the data capture. So there is a syntax, and I'm just going to copy this into my implementation guide. So I can just call it forms.fsh. As long as the extension is that one, system will recognize it. And there is, so these things are just macros that we have. You can look it up in the example. I'll actually put the link in the Google Doc. The value set is here repeated because I just wanted to reuse it. So it's the same value set, but I just wanted to reuse it. It's a small trick. Then, and of course, the statuses, then I just wanted to put them there. Most of these things are repeating information that's already out there. Why? Because we just have a questionnaire. So questionnaire is that FHIR resource that allows us to make forms. And you say, I want to create my food allergy questionnaire, and I want to include these value sets. That's just the trick of repeating them so that they can display properly. A form has a title, has a description, and I want to add my questions. In this case, my questions are going to be very similar to what I had in my data model. So I'm just going to say the first question is about the patient, and the second one is about the allergen, and the third one is about the clinical status. And I do that. After doing that, and then at this moment, I can switch already to the other implementation guide because we are also right on time. Then you will have this. You'll have the logical model. You have the self-report. This is the form I'm going to show in a second. You have the profile that I made before. Food allergies, this is the value set. And then I have an example. The example is also easy to create. So this is just an example. All of these are JSON files. The value set is the one that I defined, and the form is a FHIR way to determine the questionnaire, to determine a questionnaire. And this is my stopping point. You have, so this comes down as a JSON file, as all the things that we've done in that profiling language. It comes on as a file. It has all the value sets here for convenience, and it has the questions. So the first question is about the patient ID. The second question is about the substance, and the third one is about the status. This is a standard way to express a form. And if we have this, you can also preview this. That's one thing that we added. So all of this comes out of the box. When you start your own implementation guide, the moment that you add a questionnaire, you'll have this option as well. And most important, if you remember from the session, from the other session, if you were there, this JSON file is the one that you can put onto the Android platform or any other platform and say, please render this questionnaire. And the great advantage is that if I forgot a comma here, or if I need to change the values, there is no problem. I just go here, I add the questions, I change something here, I press rebuild, and at the end of this, I have my questionnaire in a way that I can say to my Android application, here's the new version of the questionnaire, do with it what you need. So this is awesome for release management or for quick iteration. And I'll stop there. I know that we are a bit ahead of.
Thank you. Thank you, Jose. We have a question from Dr. Prabhat. Why can't it be recorded that data as one, that asterisk as multiple records can be taken in the same episode? I think he was asking, is it possible to have one dot asterisk?
Yes, but depends where. So the allergy intolerance as a data object refers to one reporting of one allergy for one patient. So you can have as many of those as you want for one patient. So if I understand the question well, so if you have the same episode, then you have, so if as a clinician you are saying, I have one episode that has multiple allergies, then it's the same thing. So we just change our model because our model is at the level of one allergy intolerance report. But if you want to make something above it, so one episode that has many allergy intolerances, then it's the same thing. What you would do is to go to the models and say, well, then this is not my highest level. My highest level is episode. And then under the episode, I have my allergies. Sorry, I'm making it very short. And then all these things are underneath my allergies. So that's pretty much what you would do. So you can do that in terms of, there's an impact in terms of doing this and in terms of profiling, but of course, and let me use that to recommend. The important thing is that you capture the data as you want it in the field. Of course, you want many allergies. And if you want to link them to an episode, start with this. The rest, if that is more complicated to do on FHIR, that's their problem. I mean, that's problem of people like me. We have to figure out, but start with that. So yes, we can do that. You should provide these things, this kind of feedback, and it is possible to do that. It just changes our model. My assumption is that we are just talking about one food allergy reporting. If you want to have several, then you do that.
So Jose, I think at least from our needs, I think we'll have our internal sessions on setting up the tools. So at least everyone will have the right tools when they start sharing their respective implementation guides and profiles. And then maybe once we have all, where we're all leveled off, we have 7 countries with interoperability labs. Once we're leveled off with the tools, we'll ask each country to just come up with a model for one of the narrative policies that they're working on together with the Ministry of Health. So it's the model in shorthand that they need to work on first, right?
Indeed. You start, it's my recommendation. If you start with that, your alignment between the clinicians and the technicians, it's much easier, much smoother, because you don't require the clinicians and the business experts to be diving deep into the technological stack. That is very important.
Right. So the model is a good meeting point of the technical and the non-technical / clinician / public health people.
Usually is. And it's
yes,
because but indeed, it's very good to start there.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Before we get to the nitty-gritty details of JSON and XML and forms, let's go to a higher level and agree on the model first. And then once there's a sign off on the model, then we go to profiles, right? And then after profiles to terminology, and everything is shorthand, FHIR shorthand.
You can do the JSONs by hand, but normally my recommendation is it's so easy to learn shorthand that you just do it. And it's,
or they can go to the FHIR shorthand webpage and they go back and forth, enter the JSON and get the shorthand, or get the shorthand and then show the JSON, right? And so maybe we can add that as one of the tools in the system.
It is there. So the link to install it is there. That's the one that gives you some tricks, and the reference to the language is there. And there's also I will put more content. So stay tuned for changes in this in the next few minutes. I will add a few more links here.
Okay. So what's next? AeHIN is actually beefing up the country interoperability labs. So we are going to create an interoperability lab formation program. We start with the materials that we have from Jose and Carl. We got the WHO SMART guidelines. We found the Android FHIR SDK. We got the tools from Jose. We got the process. So we'll meet with the community of interoperability labs. We'll make sure that we all have set up the right tools, that we're talking the same language between the labs. And then if we have questions, we'll call you, Jose. But if we can settle it amongst ourselves, we'll do it. And then we'll ask them to come up with models for real-world MOH policies that the MOH actually wanted them to convert into FHIR. And then we'll call you to maybe part 3, Jose, where now this is going to be a show and tell of the interoperability labs. Not the whole form. Maybe if they have the whole form, then that's fine. But just show us what they've done in 1 month, and then you can give us some feedback on what we did well, what things we can improve on. Is that okay, Jose?
That's
all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll not evaluate. I'll just provide whatever tools and techniques that I have in my backpack.
Good. So with that, thank you very much, Jose. We have this recording. We will put them all together, and we'll call everyone to a COIL meeting, and let's get our tools set up and get ready to support our Ministry of Health. With that, good night, everyone. Thank you, Jose. Thank you, everyone, for joining this call. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a lot of work to do. Let's do it together. Okay, good night.
Indeed.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you very much.